Let me start with something I noticed late in life, after I'd stopped expecting people to understand me. There was a woman who used to work the front desk at a clinic I visited for years. Quiet sort. The kind of person you'd walk past 100 times without learning her name. And one afternoon, while I was waiting, I watched a man come in, sit down across the room, and before he'd said a single word to anyone, she stood up, walked over, and asked him if he was all right. He hadn't done anything. No tears, no collapse. He'd simply sat down. But she'd seen something in the way he lowered himself into the chair that told her the floor had gone out from under his life that morning. And she was right. I found out later his wife had passed the night before. I never forgot that, because I realized she wasn't guessing. She'd read something the rest of us couldn't read, and she'd read it instantly, without thinking, the way you'd read the weather off the color of the sky. My name is Walter. I've spent most of my years watching people, not in a clever way, just as a man who never quite fit into the rooms he was placed in, so he learned to study them from the edge. And what I want to talk to you about today is something you've probably been told to be ashamed of, or to hide, or to explain away. The fact that you see things other people don't, that you feel things before they happen, that you've started to notice the people around you noticing it about you. You're not making it up, and I want to spend the next little while telling you what it actually is, because I don't think anyone has ever told you the truth about it. Let's get one thing clear at the start. When people in your life say you're psychic, and they will say it, half joking, a little nervous, they're reaching for the only word they know. It's not the right word, but they're reaching for it because they've watched you do something they can't explain, and human beings need a name for what frightens them. You knew the phone was going to ring. You felt the friendship turning cold before anyone said a word. You walked into a house and knew in your chest that something was wrong in that family, and a month later, it all came apart exactly where you'd felt the crack. They remember these things. They keep a quiet list, and one day they look at you a little too long and say, half laughing, "It's like you can read minds." You can't read minds. What you can do is far older and far more honest. And Scripture has a name for it that has nothing to do with the carnival booth. There was a boy in the temple once sleeping who heard a voice in the night and thought it was the old priest calling him. 3 times he ran to the old man's bed. 3 times he was sent back. It took an old, half-blind man named Eli to understand what was happening, that the boy was hearing something nobody else in that building could hear. And the instruction Eli gave him was simple. The next time it comes, don't run. Lie still and say, "Speak, for your servant is listening." That boy was Samuel, and from that night on, the whole nation came to understand that this boy heard things before they happened, knew things he had no natural way of knowing, and spoke them out loud whether people wanted to hear them or not. Now, here's what I want you to catch, because almost everyone misses it. The text says something quiet and devastating right before that night. It says, "The word of the Lord was rare in those days." There was no widespread vision. Do you understand what that means? It means almost nobody was hearing anything. The whole religious system was running, the lamps were lit, the rituals were performed, and underneath all of it, the line had gone dead. Nobody was perceiving anything real anymore, and Into that deadness, into that spiritual silence, one person started to perceive. One. That's the first thing I need you to understand about what's happening to you. You're not perceiving more because everyone around you is perceiving the same. You're perceiving in a time and among people where most have stopped perceiving entirely. That's why it stands out. That's why they notice. A man who sees in a country of seers is unremarkable. A man who sees among the blind gets followed and feared and eventually accused. What you have is discernment, and discernment is not magic. Discernment is the trained, or in your case, the God-given capacity to perceive the true state of a thing beneath its surface, to know the difference between what a person is saying and what a person is, to feel the gap between the words in a room and the truth in a room. Paul listed it plainly when he wrote to the Corinthians about the gifts given to ordinary believers: wisdom, knowledge, faith, healing, and right there in the middle of the list, the discerning of spirits, the ability to tell what's really driving something, what's really behind a face, a movement, a decision. There's a moment in the Gospels that I keep coming back to on this. A man is brought to Jesus, and before anyone explains the situation, before a single fact is laid out, the text says he knew what was in the man. He didn't need testimony. He didn't need a file. He perceived the inside of a person the way you and I perceive the outside. And the religious men standing nearby, the ones who'd memorized everything and perceived nothing, would sit in a room and reason in their hearts, quietly, saying nothing aloud, and he'd answer the thought before they'd spoken it. Why do you reason these things in your hearts? They found it unbearable. Of course they did. They'd built an entire life out of being seen the way they wanted to be seen, and here was someone who saw straight through to the floor of them. That's the lineage you're standing in, not the fortune teller, the watchman, the one who knows what's in a person without being told. You've had this your whole life, haven't you? You just didn't have the right word for it. Let me tell you how it usually starts, because I've heard this story enough times now that I could tell it in my sleep. It starts in childhood with you being the one who always knew when the adults were lying. They'd smile and tell you everything was fine, and you'd feel the cold underneath the smile, and you'd say so, and you'd get punished for it. Not for being wrong, for being right at the wrong moment, so you learned to keep it quiet. You learned that perceiving the truth out loud was dangerous, so you swallowed it year after year, until the perceiving became something private, a thing that happened inside you that you never spoke. And now, in your adult life, it's getting louder. The signals you used to ignore are too strong to ignore. You meet someone, and within 10 minutes, you know exactly what they're going to cost you. And you're right. You sense a death, a phone call, a betrayal, a turning before it lands. And the people closest to you have started to notice that you're never surprised. That's the tell, by the way. That's what they're actually picking up on. Not that you predict things, that you're never shocked when they happen, because somewhere inside you already knew. I went through a stretch in my 40s where this frightened me about myself. I'm telling you that plainly because I don't want you to think I'm standing on some mountain of certainty. I had a season where I kept knowing things about people and being unable to do anything with it, and it felt less like a gift and more like a curse, like being forced to watch a slow car accident and never being allowed to shout. I'd meet a man at a dinner and know his marriage was already over in his heart, months before he knew it himself. I'd sit with someone full of plans and feel, underneath the plans, a kind of quiet despair they hadn't admitted to anyone. And I carried all of it and said nothing because who would believe me and what good would it do? I remember one in particular, a younger man at my workplace, sharp, ambitious, everyone's favorite. And every time he walked past my desk, I felt this low, cold dread, like standing near a river you know is deeper than it looks. I couldn't have told you what was wrong. There was nothing to point to. He was kind to me, kind to everyone. But the perception sat in my chest like a stone for the better part of a year, and I said nothing, because what was I going to say? That I had a feeling. You can't build a case out of a feeling. And then it all came out, the way these things do, all at once. And it was worse than even my dread had suggested, and people lost their savings. And I sat at my desk afterward thinking, I knew the whole time, and I held my tongue. That's a particular kind of grief, the grief of the watchman who saw the sword and never blew the trumpet because he was afraid of being thought foolish. It was an old friend, a man much further down the road than me, who reframed the whole thing in a single afternoon. He said, Walter, the watchman on the wall doesn't get to choose what he sees. He just gets to choose whether he stays awake. He pointed me to Ezekiel, to that passage where God appoints a man as a watchman over the house and tells him plainly, when you see the sword coming, your job is to sound the trumpet, not to control the sword, not to stop it, just to perceive it coming and to be honest about what you perceive. And he told me, the weight you're feeling isn't the curse of seeing, it's the loneliness of seeing without understanding what the seeing is for. That changed everything for me. So let me hand you the same thing he handed me, because I think you've been carrying the weight without the understanding too. The perception was never given to you so you could amaze people at parties. It was given to you because somebody, somewhere in your orbit, is going to need a watchman, and the others all fell asleep. That's the function. You see the sword coming. You feel the crack in the foundation before the house comes down. And the entire point of the gift is the trumpet, the moment you open your mouth gently at the right time and tell someone the truth they couldn't see for themselves. Now, I want to talk about the people noticing, because that's really the heart of what you came here about. They're realizing it, and it's making the relationship strange. Here's the uncomfortable thing nobody will tell you. When people realize you can perceive what's hidden, two reactions split the room, and you'll see both for the rest of your life. The first group is drawn to you with a kind of hunger. They sense that you tell them the truth, and the truth is rare, and they're starving for it. They'll come to you with their hard decisions. They'll say things like, I don't know why, but I needed to talk to you specifically. You become a kind of well people come to drink from. And that's good, mostly, as long as you remember you're a well and not a savior. But the second group, and I need you to hear me carefully, the second group becomes uneasy around you. Not because you're unkind, because you can see them, and most people spend enormous energy managing what others perceive about them. They built a careful face, and here you come, and you look at the face, and somehow they can tell you're seeing past it. That makes people anxious in a way they can't name. So they pull back. They get a little cold. Sometimes they turn on you outright, and they'll never be able to give a reason that makes sense, because the real reason is that being perceived feels. to a person who is hiding, like being threatened. You've lost friends this way and never understood why. I'm telling you why. They couldn't keep their masks on around you, and rather than take the mask off, they left the room. Think about Joseph for a second, because his story is the cleanest picture of this I know. Here's a young man who perceives. He sees in dreams what's coming, the bowing sheaves, the bowing stars, the future bending toward him. And what does he get for it? His own brothers can't stand to be near him. The text is brutally honest. They hated him, and they could not speak peaceably to him, not because he'd wronged them, because he perceived a future they didn't want to be true, and his very presence reminded them of it. So they threw him in a pit and sold him off, and told their father he was dead. The perception cost him everything before it saved everyone. And here's the part of Joseph's story that I think is written specifically for people like you. The gift that got him thrown in the pit is the exact same gift that eventually got him out of the prison and set in front of the throne. The very thing his brothers hated, that he could read what was hidden, that he could interpret what others couldn't. That was the thing that, years later, saved entire nations from starving. Same gift. The pit and the palace were both built out of the same perception. The only thing that changed was timing and patience, and a willingness to keep seeing even after seeing had cost him so much. If you've been punished for what you perceive, you're in the oldest company there is. Don't let the punishment convince you the gift is a flaw. Let me give you something practical, because I'm not a man who likes to leave people standing in mid-air with their feelings. There are markers, ways to know that what you have is the real thing, discernment, and not just anxiety dressed up as intuition. I want to walk you through a few because, in my experience, the people who actually carry this gift tend to be the ones most afraid that they're imagining it. The first marker is that your perceptions are specific and they're confirmed. Anxiety is vague. It tells you something bad will happen somewhere, somehow. Discernment is precise. It tells you this person, this situation, this crack, and then time proves you right. If you look back over your life and you see a trail of moments where you knew the specific thing before it happened, that's not anxiety. Anxiety doesn't have a track record. You do. The second marker is that the perception comes with a strange calm rather than panic. When real discernment lands on me, it doesn't feel like fear. It feels like quiet knowing. The thing simply settles into place, like a key sliding into a lock. Fear shouts, discernment whispers, and the whisper is steady. If your knowing arrives calm and clear, even when what it's telling you is hard, that's the mark of the genuine thing. The third marker, and this is the one that separates a true gift from a counterfeit, is that your perception consistently moves toward truth and protection, not toward control or pride. The counterfeit version of this wants to use perception for leverage, to know things about people so you can manage them, impress them, hold power over them. The real version wants to use it to protect, to warn, to set free. Test yourself honestly. What does your gift want to do with what it sees? If it wants to guard people, you're carrying the real thing. If it wants to rule them, something has crept in that needs rooting out. There's an old line in the letter of James that's been a plumb line for me on this. He talks about two kinds of wisdom, one that comes from above and one that comes from below. And he says The wisdom from below traffics in bitterness and self-seeking, while the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy. So when your perception arrives, you can check its source by its flavor. Does it make you bitter and superior? Then it's drifted downward. Does it make you merciful and protective, even toward the person whose darkness you just saw? Then it came from above, and you can trust it. I want to give you one warning before I close, because I'd be a poor watchman if I sent you off without it. The danger for people like you is not that you'll lose the gift. It's that you'll grow proud of it, or you'll grow weary of it, and either one will rot it. The proud version starts to think they're special, set above ordinary people, a different class of human, and the moment that happens, the gift starts to curdle, because perception fused with pride becomes a weapon you point at others to make yourself feel large. I've watched it happen to good people. They started out humble and protective, and they ended up cynical, sitting in judgment over everyone, lonely, bitter, sure they could see through every soul in the room. They could, and it made them miserable because they'd stopped using the seeing to love and started using it to condemn. And the weary version is the opposite danger. It's the man who got tired of being right and being punished for it, so he shut the whole thing down. He stopped listening. He drowned the signal in noise and business and drink and distraction because perceiving had simply hurt too much. And he became, in the end, exactly like the sleeping nation in Samuel's day, a place where the word had grown rare and there was no vision. Don't do that. The world does not need one more person who chose to go blind because seeing was painful. It needs the few who'll keep their eyes open even when it costs them. There's a middle road between the proud and the weary, and that road is the one Samuel walked his whole life. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Notice the posture. Not, look how much I can hear. Not, I'm so tired of hearing. Just a servant, listening, ready, low to the ground, available. That's the whole secret. You're not the source of the perception. You're the one who stayed awake to receive it. And there's no pride in that. And there's no exhaustion in it either, because a servant who's listening isn't carrying the weight of the message. He's just carrying it across the room and setting it down where it's needed. So let me tell you who you actually are, now that we've cleared away the carnival word. You're a watchman. You were stationed on a wall in a sleeping city, and you woke up before the others, and now you can see the road in both directions when everyone else can only see the wall in front of their face. The neighbors think you're psychic because they don't have a category for someone who simply hasn't fallen asleep. The ones with something to hide will pull away from you, and the ones starving for truth will be drawn to you, and you'll spend your life learning which is which. The gift will cost you the way it cost Joseph and Samuel and every watchman who ever sounded a trumpet into a quiet night. And it will save people the way it saved them too. Same gift, pit and palace, both. I came to peace with mine somewhere in my 60s. I stopped wishing I were like everyone else. I stopped apologizing for knowing things, and I stopped, most of all, treating it like something that made me better than the next man. Because the front desk woman who saw the grieving stranger before he spoke a word never thought of herself as special. She just thought it was her job to walk across the room. That's what stayed with me. The gift, in the end, is not about you. It's about the man in the chair who needs someone to notice him. before I go, I want to hear from you. And I mean that genuinely. In the comments below, don't tell me you're psychic. Tell me about the one time you knew something before it happened and nobody believed you until it did. Be specific. Tell me what you sensed and how it turned out, and whether you spoke up or stayed quiet. I read these, and I think the rest of the people watching need to know they're not alone in this more than they need anything else I could say. And let me leave you with a quiet word before we part. Father, for the one watching who has spent a lifetime seeing what others can't and being afraid of it, settle them now. Teach them that what they carry came from you and is meant to guard and not to wound. Take the pride off it and take the weariness off it and leave just the listening. Make them a watchman who stays awake, gentle with what they see, faithful with what they know. And when the time comes to sound the trumpet, give them the courage to open their mouth and the mercy to do it kindly. Keep them company in the loneliness of seeing they are not alone and they never were. Amen.